Hey there, friends and running fans. This is Amby Burfoot, welcoming you to the latest episode of the podcast, Running State of the Sport.
And this is George Hirsch, your co-host at Running State of the Sport. In every episode, we talk to the smartest, most informed, most influential, and sometimes fastest runners on the planet.
This week, we have a great conversation with Sara Hall, who finished fifth in the recent U.S. Olympic marathon trials. But that's almost the least of Sara's amazing life story, which goes all the way back to her first California State cross-country championship when she was a ninth grader in high school. She won Footlocker cross-country in her senior year in high school, had a great track career at Stanford, and of course she's been married for a long time now to her college teammate and sweetheart, Ryan Hall, with whom she adopted 4 Ethiopian sisters just as she was starting her own marathon career in 2015. Wow, I get tired just thinking about that, and that's before the training and the racing.
No, she's something. And if you followed the recent marathon trials, you saw Sara run with the lead pack for as long as she could. And then she finished in 2:26:06, which didn't put her on the Olympic team, but it did surpass Des Linden's Masters record for U.S. women over 40. So when we reached out to Sara, she was in Quito, Ecuador. She was preparing for another spring marathon, which I think should be announced very soon. And she also said she's planning to take a shot at the Olympic trials at 10,000 meters. And Amby, you and I will be rooting for her. Wouldn't it be just great to see her on an Olympic team? So before we talk to Sara, let's discuss some of the big running news. And there was a lot of it this week.
Yeah, the Tokyo Marathon was on Sunday, March 3rd, and that had 2 big headline entries, Eliud Kipchoge on the men's side and Sifan Hassan on the women's side. Both were favorites, I would say, at Tokyo, and many people were saying, hey, these are the runners to watch in Paris this summer. But now Tokyo has been run, and as the marathon will do, the script has been rewritten quite a bit. Kipchoge finished 10th in 2:06:50, and he was behind 5 other Kenyan runners, with his countryman Benson Kipruto winning in 2:02:16. Kipruto has now won marathon majors in Boston, Chicago, and Tokyo. So you've got to count him one of the major threats in the coming Paris Olympic Marathon. And you wouldn't want to be a member of that Kenyan Olympic Marathon selection team because there are a number of runners in Kenya now who may be faster than Eliud Kipchoge, but he's the former world record holder. He's won the last 2 Olympic marathons, and how are you going to keep him out of Paris? Well, we shall see. That hasn't been determined yet. Sifan Hassan also had a subpar race. She was 4th in Tokyo at 2:18:05. That's quite a bit behind the 2:13:44 she ran last fall in Chicago, where she won. But whether she runs the marathon distance in Paris or not, we don't have to worry too much about her because she can race and win at almost any distance, it seems. In the last Olympics in Tokyo, she won the 5,000 and the 10,000 and was 3rd in the 1,500. Talk about range. Couple other quick finishing results from Tokyo. Betsy Sena was 5th in 2:19:37, a month after dropping out of the U.S. Olympic marathon trials. That makes her the 3rd fastest American ever after Emily Sisson and Cara D'Amato. And finally, Joan Benoit Samuelson. She's still going and going and going. She's 66 now, and she finished Tokyo in 3:42:18. She now has one of those much cherished 6-star medals because she has run all 6 of the Abbott World Marathon Majors. Whew, that was a lot from Tokyo, George. There was even more at Glasgow. Good luck summarizing it.
Well, I can't summarize Glasgow because I can only toss you a few highlights. We don't have the time for it, but it was just a terrific track meet and one that only gets you really excited about thinking of Paris this summer and the Olympic Games. Two featured events that lived up to all expectations were the women's and the men's 3,000 meter races, and boy, were they exciting. Elle St. Pierre, she is the American. She's running just out of her mind, and like we've never seen her run before. She's come back from giving birth, and she's fantastic. I would have said the favorite in that race was Tesgai, the Ethiopian Gaddafi. Tesgai, a world record holder at 5,000 meters. But when it came to the final sprint, I mean, just St. Pierre just unleashed one that was just thrilling. And she timed her race perfectly, and it was just a sight to behold. And equally impressive, and the hometown fans loved it. Josh Kerr, the Scotsman, won the men's 3,000 with just a race that he executed to perfection, beating another American. Americans did awfully well in Glasgow, Yared Nuguse. And Nuguse came from sort of out of nowhere in the last couple of hundred meters to finish second. And he could have stayed closer to the pace, I would think, and might have learned a good lesson on the international scene from that race. I think Nuguse probably will be running 1,500 meters in Paris, and he got himself a good learning experience and did a great job coming second to Josh Kerr. Oh, what else? I mean, I don't know, Amby, just Femke Bol, the Dutch 400-meter hurdler. She ran 400 meters flat, and for the second time in a few weeks, she lowered the world record at what is not supposed to even be her signature event. And then, of course, anchored the Dutch relay team over the Americans. She's something. What she'll do in Paris, meaning whether she'll just run the 400 hurdles or try to run the 400 flat and throw in a relay, I think she is quite a big star in the sport. And stars in the sport, I don't think there's probably a bigger one than Grant Holloway. My gosh, this guy, it's 10 years and counting since he's lost a race. That takes him back to high school days, believe it or not. I mean, we haven't seen a winning streak like this in track and field since the great Edwin Moses. So at 110-meter hurdles in Paris, I think he's going to come in as a very strong favorite. He won the 60 hurdles in Glasgow, and just he looked like he was at just a different level than every other hurdler. And Noah Lyles, he always gets our attention. I'd say he's the most colorful athlete in the sport, and he pretty much lives up to all the hype. Didn't quite win the 60, and he lost only to Christian Coleman, the world record holder in the event, and just barely lost to him. And Noah Lyles just doesn't get out of the blocks quickly. But once he does, boy, does he make up ground. But the interesting thing was he asked to be on the 4x400 meter relay team. And he's not known as a 400 meter relay runner, 400 meter runner. He did run the event, and he ran it well in high school. And I thought he acquitted himself really well. He ran 45.6, respectable, pretty much the same kind of times as his three teammates. And I know he did it with the hope that he's going to get some serious consideration to run the 4x4 in Paris, which would give him a shot at 4 medals, and in his mind, a shot at 4 gold medals, the 100, the 200, and both relays. And he's just something awfully good. And I could go on and on and on. Geordie Beamish of New Zealand winning the 1500. We're going to see some with 2 Americans, Cole Hocker and the young 20-year-old Hobbs Kessler getting the other 2 medals. There's just so much, Amby. You got to stop me right there. So that's it.
George, I got 2 things very quickly to add to the Glasgow World Indoor Championships report. And number 1 is, I never in my wildest dreams imagined a world meet in which U.S. runners were second and third, 2 podiums in both the men's 1500 and the women's 1500. That was just unforeseen in my crystal ball. And secondly, your journalistic prowess was lacking only in that you failed to mention one important thing about the winners of the 3,000 meters. Both of them were wearing sunglasses in an indoor track meet.
I noticed they do that. It's so interesting, and you do wonder. We have to ask them what's behind that.
Oh, you think it's maybe sponsorship and money?
Either that or this kind of it's a cool statement. I don't know.
I certainly don't either. I have my suspicions. But however it goes, that is the biggest recent running news as we see it here at Running State of the Sport. This podcast, Running State of the Sport, is brought to you by marathonhandbook.com and runlongrunhealthy.com. Marathon Handbook is the world's leading marathon website with a special focus on trustworthy running information and free, runner-tested training plans for all ability levels.
Run Long, Run Healthy is Amby's weekly newsletter with the newest, most scientific, and most useful training advice for runners.
Now let's turn to Sara Hall, this week's guest on the podcast Running State of the Sport. Sara just finished 5th in the U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials, and she set a new American record for women over 40 in that race, despite the quite warm conditions. Sara ran a sparkling 2:26:06. But what's more impressive about Sara is really the length of her world-class running career, which dates all the way back, and I tried to count these years accurately, Sara. I came up with 1997, which was the year that you won the first of 4 straight cross-country titles in California, not a small or insignificant running state. That makes 27 years and counting. Sara, you're in Quito, Ecuador, which is not where people usually are when we speak to them. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, Sara, first off, let's go back to the trials. On one hand, I know it was deeply disappointing, 5th place. On the other hand, it was a sensational performance. And we didn't have you among our top picks in the trials this year, not after the summer and fall. You didn't have a fall marathon. You skipped the Houston half marathon, which was 3 weeks before the trials. So how did you end up racing so well and with such confidence in Orlando? It didn't seem like you had the perfect build-up for it.
Yeah. I think that's one of the benefits of age and experience is, it can be a benefit and a challenge because I think when you're ready, but then you also when you're not ready, and so it's hard to fake it. And so, but in this case, like I definitely knew I was from my training. I have enough experience doing marathon training now that I believed I was, ready to contend for that team. And I kind of liked flying under the radar a little bit. It was funny because that wasn't my intention. Like I dealt with a really long string of injuries it was almost exactly a year to the date from the start of the first one to the end of the last one. It was crazy. It was like almost to the day. And so, yeah, that was the main reason why I was kind of off the grid. But then as it got closer, like I kind of just embraced that. And like I opted out of the press conference and things like that. Cause I'm like, I'm just going to keep staying in my cave at this point. So yeah. But yeah, I think, based on our training, we were excited about the trials for sure. And unfortunately it didn't pan out how I dreamed it would, but definitely was the best I could do on the day.
So, Sarah, we don't want to make you list the injuries that you had almost to the year for the date before the trials. But what were some of the key issues, and how did you and Ryan, and I know you've got a kind of master body therapist back at home, how did you manage and negotiate the ins and outs of injuries and training?
Yeah, it was crazy because I feel like my strength in my career has always been durability, and I've always just kind of expected my body to handle what I threw at it. And then that year was just completely different. Like it felt like I could not get consistency, and they were all kind of connected. It was 2 IT band injuries and then an SI joint injury. And then I felt the SI joint, another time too. It didn't really take that much training away, but they were pretty long. Like the first IT band injury was 4 months of no running.
Whoa.
And near the end of that, I couldn't even cross train to try to get out of it. And so yeah, they were connected in that they're all kind of stability related injuries. So I had to really focus on the strength work and changing my form, getting more core stability, all of these things. And there's different reasons why I think they started when they did. Some were like external reasons, some were more internal reasons, but yeah, it was one of those things where it really took like breaking down everything and building it back up like multiple times, both with Ryan and my therapist John. And so at points was like, am I ever going to get out of this? Like maybe this is the end. And I think what kept me in it was, the times I could run during that year, running felt the best it ever had. And so it wasn't like I felt like old and broken. And I was like, this is just, being 40, I guess, like maybe this is what 40 feels like. It was the opposite. It was like, man, I've never felt this good running. And so if I can just get some consistency and get to the other side, like I feel like I can have my best races. And so that really kept me working harder than I ever have that time.
Sarah, I just want to follow up quickly on this one. I wasn't anticipating it, but 4 months, you said, that's a really long time to essentially not be running in a year when you're building to the trials. And of course, 4 months of not running is stress and depression and wondering, where is this headed? How did you keep your mind in a good state while you were going through that?
Yeah, it was hard because with IT band, there's just no finish line is the scary thing. And of course, as soon as you put on social media that you have IT band syndrome, you have all these people being like, oh, I had that for 8 years. Like things, and you're like, that is not helping. So yeah, I think that's the hard part is like, it just doesn't, it doesn't respond like bone or where you have this very clear timeline. And so the uncertainty was hard, but I really had to just dive into like what we were doing to change my form and the strength work. And it was almost like the art side of running. Like I feel like most of running is pain management and stuff like that. And it was almost like I got to like really work on the skill part of my craft, which was, I think, I would rather have not have gone through it because it was a lot of work, but I think, I did just try to embrace that part of it. And, I think that is what's kind of kept me in the sport as long as I have, is like, I've just come to really love the work and even like painful stuff, like getting beat up on the massage table for hours and, really painful strength work and stuff. Like I actually like kind of embrace the pain and of running and stuff. And so I think that helped me just be able to just take it one day at a time and just keep putting my head down and working.
You came really close to a top 3 finish, so I'm sure it was emotional. Did getting the American record, breaking Des Linden's record, which she set on a much faster course and better conditions in Chicago, did that sort of offset the loss of not getting on the podium at all?
Not really, to be honest. Yeah. I didn't even think about it when I finished, or my agent, I think, texted me the next day and was like, well, you officially got this. And, I figured that like that record would happen at some point. I ran 2:25 at Boston. And I think what excites me more at this point is still the overall American records. Like those are the paces I have at the top of my training log, where it's like, those are goal paces I want to be operating at in training. And, so yeah, hopefully I'll get a chance, to like go for some fast times. It's been a while since I've been able to run fast in the marathon and the half. But yeah, I think what's cool is that even though it didn't mean that much to me, it's been fun to see how it means a lot to other women that are over 40 and for them to see me like running like the fastest I ever have at this age, it like gives them hope for their running goals, that it's not too late. And so in that way, like it is meaningful to me, because it's, I don't know, just getting to see that trickle out effect is cool.
Sara, my training partner is a 72-year-old female, and I can tell you that those women are waiting to see what you do at 50, 60, and 70 as well. I got to ask you about a couple of moments during the race, and then we'll move on. There was one point where Kira D'Amato dropped away, and of course, we all knew she was a top contender. I'm wondering if that made you feel a little bit optimistic, not that you wished badly for her, but like, wow, there's one gone. And then I'm wondering, what was it like late in the race when Dakota Lindworm came through?
Yeah, I actually didn't know Kira had dropped out or had dropped back. Like I was kind of in the front the whole race, like in the top few people, and I never really looked behind me. And I actually didn't realize we had so many people in our pack for so long. I was kind of just focused on, just looking ahead and staying within myself. But yeah, there were so many people that were contenders. That's what made this like hard, but also awesome, just how amazing U.S. women's distance running is. So I think, that even if I had known that, I think there were just plenty of other people I knew that were players. And, but yeah, when Dakota, so even before Dakota came around, Caroline Rotich made a really strong move by me. When it was just Betsy Sena and I in third and fourth, and I was not able to match her move. Like I was dealing with some cramps, in that last lap and off and on, and, in my legs, different areas of my legs. And then, Dakota ended up coming around her even stronger, and like Caroline went with her. And so for a long time, I was trying to like bridge that gap with them, but telling myself all the things you want to tell yourself, staying positive, and just knowing like especially in hot marathons, like anything can happen up front. Like you don't know like who's dropped out up there, or like people can just go from being okay to really not okay really quickly. And so yeah, I was really, really fighting. Honestly, like I've never fought so hard in a race that whole last loop. And, it was really tough, but yeah, she ran an incredible race, and man, what a moment. I'm really excited to see like now with the momentum she has, just kind of what she can continue to do.
So Sara, you're getting coached by your husband, Ryan, which sounds like it could be a potential emotional roller coaster. So tell us how the two of you make that work.
Yeah, I think we've gotten better at it. I wouldn't say that it's always a really professional relationship. We could probably, I see people like my friend Rachel Smith, who is coached by her husband, Mike Smith, and they started as like coach athlete before they had a relationship and were married. And so they have a very like, I think because they started that way, it's like easier for them to have that really professional. Whereas Ryan and I started as spouses. And so, we're like definitely less filtered where, yeah, if we have like frustrations going on or stuff, it's like hard to like leave them at home and not bring them to training. But yeah, I think in general, it's really obviously worked well for my career. Ryan's an incredible coach. It's been fun to listen to some podcasts recently with McKenna Myler and Rory Linkletter, who've just talked about what an amazing coach he is. And it's been fun to see him, like just his gifts come out in that way. And I've been able to experience it for a long time. And now other people are getting to experience it. But yeah, I would say it's a lot more of a collaboration than most coach athlete relationships, which I think is healthy because especially how long I've been doing this sport and just how well I know no one knows my body better than I do. And so like being able to have a say in how training's affecting me, what I feel like I need most. And I think that has really helped me because I've always kind of wanted an element of control in my training. And, I think it was harder for me at times, like in a college scenario where it's very, authoritative kind of coaching. And so yeah, I would say it's mostly really good. And what's fun is like we can travel and go to training camps, places like Crested Butte and things. And your coach is always just there with you, which is awesome.
Sara, it's kind of fun to hear you quite candidly say that it's mostly good. And obviously you're putting it in a positive light. And all of us are sitting here and thinking, we really want to see the video of you and Ryan arguing about a workout or something like that. It would be great fun. But to you, what are the most important principles of Ryan's marathon coaching that have worked for you and maybe for others? You certainly mentioned others who've run really fast in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think there's the physical side and the mental side. Like Ryan is really good at the mental side. I've never felt like I've needed a sports psychologist because he's kind of always been that for me, even before he was coaching me. But I think that's a really important part of coaching. I think that's where I've at times had a hard time with coaches when, for instance, like they'll be like, you just gave up in that race, And I'm like, no, I didn't. Like, I know what was going on in my head. Like, and, I think Ryan always gives me the benefit of the doubt. And like, he's like, the first step in believing you're a tough runner the first step in becoming tough as a runner is believing you're a tough runner. Like if you don't believe you are, then you won't be, And so I think, so yeah, definitely the mental side, how we process things and always turn things to positives. And physically, I think, a lot of what I do is similar to what he did in his career. And, I think I do benefit from a more aggressive training schedule of, intensity and like less easy days in between workouts and things like that. And so yeah, it's something we're always fine tuning and Ryan and I both like to kind of think outside the box. So like I'll have an idea of something and he like, yeah, he'll let me try it because he was kind of the same way in his career. And thankfully I've been able to learn from a lot of his mistakes and not do those things necessarily. But, and we make mistakes too. Like even I had an idea about heat training I wanted to try, before the trials and it ended up being like way too much. And I like had some overtraining symptoms for a while and stuff. And so we don't always get it right, but sometimes when we're creative, like I feel like we stumble upon these awesome secret weapons that we keep in the program and just keep implementing for other years.
So you talked about, some of the lessons you've learned from Ryan's career. Obviously, he was a spectacular marathon runner, but unlike you, it's not been a career of durability decade after decade. he certainly didn't keep at it until 40. In fact, it was earlier in his 30s that he really kind of past his peak. And so what do you think you two learned from that in his career?
Yeah, I think definitely one of the biggest things I think I learned was he was really focused on trying to get his body to look like his competitors, the East Africans. And like, that just wasn't his body type, you know? And I think what I've learned is like, when you try to morph your body into something it naturally isn't, like, that's not sustainable, you know? And it may work for a little while, but, at some point, like, yeah, you're going to have a lot of fatigue and injuries and things like that. So one thing I think that's helped my longevity is just like, I don't try to manipulate my weight that much. And I would say that's kind of unusual maybe for pro distance runners, but I feel like I listen to my body with how I eat, and just like, I don't even really weigh myself hardly ever. And I think that like a lot is being made of relative energy deficiency syndrome, REDS, now. And I think we're realizing like how much fatigue or even things like in marathon training, like you expect to feel tired all the time, but how much of that is actually like not getting enough fuel at times where you really need it. And so, yeah, so I would say that's one of them, but I would say what's different from Ryan's career and my career too, is like, he just was crushing it at the world level right away. And so even though he didn't have like the longevity, it's like he already got to do what I'm trying to do, and it's taken me a long time to like work up to. And so I think, I think that it was a little easier for him to step back from the sport because he'd already been to these really high highs, and it came a lot easier.
Sara, you run great all over the world, basically. Yeah, you've been to 6 or 8 or however many Olympic track trials and marathon trials, and you haven't made an Olympic team. Of course, that means some people are like, oh, poor little Sara, the hard luck kid of the marathon. How do you see yourself given that situation?
Yeah, I definitely don't see myself that way. I think I've always seen being able to do this as a gift, and I don't really feel like entitled to anything in this sport. Like, I mean, to me, to be able to be sponsored by ASICS for 19 years, doing this almost, and like get to do what I love for my job, and like chase these dreams, like have other people believe in them with me. Like, to me, that's just the most beautiful thing. So yeah, of course, like I like the trial still hurts, and like other trials I look back on and I'm like, man, if only this or this. And like those, it's hard. Like, definitely making our Olympic team is really tough. It's not just being physically prepared on the day and mentally prepared and everything, but it's also like you have to manage whatever extreme scenario is being thrown at you in that trial. And so it's like, it's a really difficult thing that I just haven't been able to put together on the day. But yeah, I think I'll always look back on my career with like gratitude. Like, I think I've seen other pro runners where it seems like they're bitter, and they just only see the things that like didn't go their way. And for me, I feel like, yeah, just so much gratitude for what I have been able to experience.
So we mentioned McKenna Myler, who Ryan's been coaching as well, and she had a pretty darn impressive 7th place finish 10 months after she gave birth. We know she moved to Flagstaff to be close to you and to Ryan. How did she come along so fast? What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, she did have an amazing progression. I think she also is similarly like pretty durable. And it's funny because people confuse us with each other. Like, they'll tag me in photos of her, and we're both kind of like more powerful stride runners, and both run for ASICS and things like that. And so, yeah, I think that she's really strong, and I think doesn't seem very injury prone. And so she was able to just keep stacking really aggressive training weeks that Ryan was throwing out at her without a lot of interruptions. And then was able to really like capitalize on that day. And so, yeah, I was so proud of her. Like, it was crazy to like see her in the finishing chute already and be like, wow, what a performance. And even seeing her out there, mixing it up front, like I'm really excited to see her career continue to progress. And it's awesome to just see too, how she prioritizes family so much and yet can still compete at such a high level. Cause I know for myself, it's just a tricky balance.
Sara, I want to note that we did invite Ryan on the podcast with you, and he very politely declined. And he said, no surprise, that if you're training and talking on podcasts, somebody's got to be taking care of the daughters and the coaching business. So let's promote the coaching business a little bit. I think it's called runfreetraining.com. Has that become a pretty big thing that takes up a lot of time?
Yeah, Run Free Training it's taking some of his time now, less than when they first got it off the ground, because they have other coaches involved coaching the athletes as well. But then, yeah, definitely coaching professional runners is like a very, you're always getting texts and always checking in on people and putting out fires and things. And so he has that as well as our kids. Like we definitely co-parent and are dividing the responsibilities, and sometimes he's doing a lot more of the driving and things like that so that I can rest. And so yeah, he's definitely really busy. But it's been fun to see him still really prioritize himself and his goals. Like, he really loves going after really hard physical things still. It's not the marathon now, but it's totally transforming his body into, super muscular and strong. And then now it's like conquering mountains, running up mountains all the time. And so yeah, I love that, because a lot of, coaches, you see it becomes so all consuming. They aren't always very good at like self-care, but Ryan is really good at still like prioritizing the things he's passionate about.
Sara, a lot of talk about BYU and the great finishes by Connie and Clayton at the trials. But Stanford, in the women's side, finished first, fourth, and fifth. Pretty darn impressive. Any explanations for that kind of performance?
Oh, I wish I did, but no, I think Stanford obviously gets like amazing talent throughout the years, and it's definitely a juggle balancing that in school. And I think that was my favorite time of life still, is my time at Stanford. And just I chose that school based on the people that especially on the team. And so yeah, I think you've just got some gritty people that are used to like even just Ton getting fourth, like working a full-time job, like that's probably not that different than what it felt like to be a student athlete at Stanford. And so, yeah, it helps you kind of find a sustainable way to do the sport.
Sara, I'm curious about the years when Ryan's marathon career was in full gear and he was top flight, running around the world, making headlines, pushing the boundaries. And your career was a little bit quieter, at least at that time. What was it like to be the supportive secondary spouse in the relationship?
Yeah, it definitely had its challenges. Because, in high school and college, like we were very much at the same level. And like, I was really wanting to be just as successful as he was, like in the track, and was frustrated with, I had my moments during those years of things coming together, but also a lot of like frustration. And so because it wasn't going as well, like I naturally kind of took the supporting role of, all right, you want to be in Mammoth, even though I'd rather be down at sea level on the track, like, okay, we'll be in Mammoth. And, but I've always seen us as a team, and like, it was an incredible ride, like getting to be his number one support person through like all of those, like from the very first marathon, like leading the London Marathon out there against the strongest field that year in any marathon. You have world record holders and Olympic champions, and it was just so fun. And so yeah, I didn't resent that at all, the success at all. It more like I wanted that for myself. And, I was like frustrated I couldn't get there, but I was really, really enjoying being on the ride with him. And I think it was interesting too, just seeing like how people treat you differently in the running industry, like how they treat him versus me. And I think it made me really realize like how I want to treat other people, and not based on like how successful you are and things, but just everyone has the same inherent value. And so yeah, it was really an interesting learning experience. And then it also felt really good to have the tables kind of turn when he retired, and then really support me. And then I really was able to thrive in my career. And so that's felt like, yeah, really special to just know there's going to be different seasons. Like, I think, it's hard when like, you don't ever want a relationship to be totally one-sided forever, but it might be for a season that one person's picking up more of the slack and stuff, but that it can come back around.
Sara, that sounds very wise to me. I want to apologize. I think I used the word secondary in describing your role supporting Ryan, and I didn't mean it like it came out. I know you were both primary in your roles, supporting each other. So I apologize, and you answered perfectly.
Oh, no, not at all. I didn't feel that way.
You said you were pretty similar level in high school. Actually, you won the Footlocker championship and same year. Ryan was third. I mean, Amby and I keep score of all this sort of stuff. Then you both went to Stanford. Share with us a little bit about your first meetings and, maybe when you first went out together, and any stories there.
Yeah, it was really interesting because neither of us had dated very much prior to meeting each other. But I think we both knew we were Christians, and actually Jim Ryan's son, Drew Ryan, had introduced us at the Footlocker Western Regionals. And I didn't have a great first impression of Ryan. He wasn't happy with his race, and he was like really in a bad mood and like kind of storming around and stuff. And same with actually the nationals. Like he wanted to win there, and he got third to Dathan and Alan Webb, which was not a terrible third in hindsight, right? But
good company.
But yeah, I mean, he definitely wasn't used to like losing. And so I didn't have a great first impression, but it's funny. I just kind of like had like my eye on him a little bit, and I think vice versa. And then he actually found me in this park. Like I was at this California State Track Championship, and I had gotten second in the mile and was getting ready for the 2 mile, and was like kind of in this park hanging out, kind of crying. And he ran into me and we talked for a little bit. And then as he left, like I just felt in my gut, like, and I attribute it to like God's voice telling me like, that's who you're going to marry.
Whoa. Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty crazy because I haven't had that clear of like a word before in my life. And so, or after probably. So I think after that, I definitely like paid a little more attention to him when school started and stuff. And we got to know each other a little bit at the preseason training camp in Mammoth Lakes. And then our dorms just happened to be right next to each other. And we ended up walking around to a lot of places together. And our first date was like the first week of freshman year. And so, yeah, it was pretty linear after that.
Sara, in the current culture, we're often told that we should be really, really cautious about pushing teenage female runners too hard because it's a difficult time for many reasons and things can go wrong. Yet you are an example of someone who was great as a 14-year-old and all through high school and college and beyond. And now you're 40, 41 almost, and you're still great. What's your message to teenage female runners who would like to be really good?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, definitely having healthy eating habits is a big one. We all know, but it's tempting, right? Like, especially the era I grew up in, like, I would say there was a lot more prevalent disordered eating at the high school and college level than now. Like, I like the trend, like I'm seeing of, female runners just being more stronger and being like, look, we're going to focus more on like the strength side of the equation, and building muscle in the gym. And I definitely had temptation to go down that road at times. And I always had really great leadership people in my life that were like, hey, like, don't take this shortcut. Like, it's not worth it. Like, you want to enjoy this sport for a long time. And that really helped me kind of get back on track. Cause yeah, there's definitely like a culture of it. But yeah, I would say also too, like, I try to encourage people. It's not necessarily the mileage, right? Like, I think that for a long time it was, if you do too much mileage, you're going to burn out. And it's like, you only have so many lifetime miles kind of thing if you run a lot early. And I think what helped me the most was playing other sports early on. I played like basketball and soccer and a lot of lateral movement sports, as well as like, I'm genetically more of like a power athlete. Like when I did genetic testing, it's like my dad was like really fast. He was a baseball player. And so I think just trying to focus on more of those sports and building strength and quickness and things, then it's not as much of a risk of injury and things to do high volume necessarily. I think everyone's individual, right? But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of fear on mileage as if that's the one key to the burnout, when really, like, I don't think that is. And I ran a lot in high school and no one was pushing me to do it. Like, I wanted to do it. I was really enjoying exploring the trails across the street from my house. And so as long as it's coming from the athlete, I think letting them run a little bit and not like having to hold them back too much, is at least my perspective.
A little bit about family life, because you and Ryan have such an interesting family. I don't think you ran your first marathon until 2015, and that was the same year that you adopted 4 sisters from Ethiopia. And how in the world do you manage 4 young girls with a marathon career? And I mean, just manage it in the sense of shopping and cooking and washing the dishes and, just your own training. And that's no easy matter.
Yeah. When we decided to adopt the girls, I thought my career would probably be over. We had talked to a lot of families that had adopted older kids from Ethiopia specifically and in general. And they were like, you got to count the cost. Like, these kids have been through a lot of trauma and like what they're going to need. Like, you don't know, you're saying yes to kind of come what may, like, you don't know what it's going to entail, and so that was hard because I was just starting to transition from the track to the roads and having a lot of fun and wanted to keep doing it. And wanted to see what I could do in the marathon. But it was something I was willing to give up if needed, because I believed in what we were doing. And, I wanted, like, I chose our kids. And it turned out that they really didn't fit the mold of what people we'd talked to. And especially early on, like, they just adjusted really well. And it was still challenging. Like, they didn't speak any English. They'd never been to school. So for my older daughters, they were extremely behind. They were, 16 and 14 and had never been to school, and trying to fit them into the school system was really difficult. But so yeah, it was challenging. It was a lot of time, but I think because their hearts were really open to us and they kind of chose us as well, then, they actually had like a really easy adjustment relative. And then allowed me, it ended up not being the end of my career, ended up being just the beginning actually of my marathon career. I ran my second marathon soon after they came home from from Ethiopia. And then, yeah, they've always just been in it with me. And so I think the fact that Ryan's in it with me and they've been in it with me, it's allowed me to keep doing it. And it's very much like, we're a team in the house. Like, I'm not the one cooking and cleaning and doing everything. It's like, we're all pitching in, we're all doing it. And so, I would say we have less traditional like gender roles and things like that. And that's allowed me to be able to do what I need to still be successful in the sport.
Sarah, I've heard Lopez Lemong talk about his first days in the United States. And the first night when he went into his bedroom, he slept with the light on all night long because he didn't know the switch on the wall could turn off the light. I'm trying to imagine. I'd love to have a picture of what it was like for you and Ryan to herd four of these kids onto a big jet plane and fly them home and introduce them to your life in the U.S. Was there one amazing anecdote or story you have to tell?
Oh man, I feel like there's a lot of like little ones. And yeah, we tried to do a lot to kind of prep them. And so there wasn't a lot of big surprises. Unfortunately, so they grew up in a really rural area with like no electricity and everything, but they had, once they were matched with us, kind of moved to the capital city where they were, Addis is a city. And so a lot of that transition of like city life, even though they weren't ever leaving this house, at least they were watching a lot of movies where they were seeing a lot of like American life. And so they were like, oh, the school bus, like we know this, it's like from the movies. And, so yeah, a lot less than you would think, and even like the dogs, like dogs in the house was a big, like that would never happen there. And they're very much animals. They're not like family members, but we definitely did a lot to tell them, like, we're like, there are kids right now, and, try to prep them for that. But yeah, I actually I want to dig up I wrote down some of the anecdotes and I'm not remembering them, but one day when I write my book, I'll write some of the funny things.
I'll be a first reader for sure.
Oh, thanks.
You said after the trials, I believe that you were considering a spring marathon. I'm wondering if that's still the case, and if you'd love to share it with us on the podcast, what it'll be, we'd love to hear it. And what do you think are the pros and cons? Boston, London. What are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I'm in a spring marathon officially now. I don't know when they are announcing it, but sadly I can't share yet. But yeah, there's definitely a number of ones I could have been excited about running, but one I really had my heart set on. But definitely pros and cons with different ones. Obviously I love to run fast. So fast courses, like London are always appealing, but London also is women's only. So sometimes that's a little bit harder to run records without, male pacers, but worked out really well for me in 2020, like getting to have a race like that where I feel like actually is becoming more winnable too up front. Like I feel like Boston is almost, the field is getting tougher and tougher. And so I think that's exciting about London, but of course Boston as an American is like, nothing can compare to that. It's so incredible. I had an amazing time out there last year. And then there's other ones like Rotterdam where you could just line up a dude and be like, let's go. Like, let's just rip American record pace or something. And so that's always exciting sounding too. But yeah, really, I'm just excited to race more. I've missed it so much in this year of setbacks and stuff. So really excited to get back out there.
Sarah, wherever you're running another marathon this spring, there'll be a lot of us cheering for you. You can count on that. You and Ryan have often or always connected your running to various charitable organizations that were important to you. Are you still doing that? And which ones are calling to you at this point?
Yeah, right now we're primarily doing work with our own charity, the Hall Steps Foundation, and it's been awesome over the years. We've had runners raise money for the charity, and we've been able to do a lot of amazing projects, both in the U.S. and abroad. But right now what we're focused on is orphan care in Ethiopia. So international adoption is actually not possible anymore at the moment from Ethiopia, but the need for orphan care is still really high. There's still 4 to 5 million orphans in the country. And there's over 60,000 kids living on the streets of just the capital city, Addis Ababa, and more throughout the country. And so yeah, that's definitely after spending a lot of time. I've probably been to Ethiopia maybe like 12 times by now. That like you see kids like living on the streets, and it's just crushing, because also I see my kids, like we've thankfully were able to complete the process right before adoption shut down, but it could have been them for sure. And so right now, the most recent thing we've been funding is a home for homeless girls in Addis, and it helps them get either involved in school or job training, and provides them a safe place to live and food and everything, because life on the streets, like the amount of sexual abuse is really high, and just like drug use to kind of stave off like feelings of hunger and things like that. And so it's not a great place. And so that's what we've been continuing to fund right now. And yeah, we're excited to do more in person. That's kind of like my dream post running, is to be actually over there more, helping with the work. And my kids really want to do it too. So my dream is to like be all doing it together one day. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we could be excited about doing there. Like we do have a dream too of starting an international standards school that could be free to poor kids in the community and help lift their communities out of poverty through education, and being able to get into like a good university from the school and stuff. And so yeah, we'll see how it evolves, but that's our focus.
Sarah,
right now.
someone needs to make a movie.
Yeah, it's fantastic, the work you're doing. We just admire both of you so much for that.
Thank you.
Well, this is called Running State of the Sport, as you know, and so let's ask you what you think is the state of the sport now. How would you call it? Excellent, good, or areas that could use more work?
Yeah, you're probably sensing I'm a bit more of an optimist. So, I mean, I tend to focus on things. I feel like what's come a long way since I started was just the female side, like contracts and opportunities for women in the sport. It was really rare for women to be doing this past 30 and after having kids or things like that. And so to see all of that just becoming the norm now. And I remember when I was coming out of college and I was talking to my agent, and he was like, if you win NCAAs in the 5K, like I expect that you'll make this. And I ended up second, but Ryan won the NCAA 5K, and it was almost double what he thought I would make. And that was kind of like the pay gap at the time, like was kind of normal. But I would say I would argue that's a lot smaller gap now. And yeah, it's just US distance running on the female side is amazing. And like, especially in the marathon. And so that's all really exciting. Yeah, I would say like things that are frustrating, especially just getting involved a little more, like being on the USATF long distance running committee and trying to change the start time at the trials, things like that. I think working with USATF tends to be challenging still. So I would love for that to get better. And I think it is exciting having people like Amy Yoder-Begley and in a position at USATF now, people that kind of really understand distance running and really care about the athletes and things. I think that will be helpful. But yeah, I think I would say we like our federation like could use some improvement, and yeah, I'm trying to put skin in the game and do what I can as far as that too.
Sarah, we do know, of course, that you and Jared Ward spoke up quite forcefully about the crazy noon starting time that was originally set for the trials, and you got it changed, and nobody knows how much of a difference it made, but at least you spoke up and you made the effort to work with the difficult people at USATF, and so we thank you for that. Our last question is really the fairy godmother question. We give you 3 fairy godmother wishes for the year, and only 3 you can wish for yourself: the family, the sport, the Olympics. What would you like to wish for this year?
Oh man, that's a really hard question.
It's a big one.
I mean, I think my obvious ones would be like solving world hunger and like world peace and those things. But if I had to be like more specific beyond those that would obviously be much more important, I would love to make the Olympic team on the track. I'm going to run the 10,000 for the first time in a couple weeks here. And so yeah, I think it's a bit of a long shot. I've done one track season in the last 8 years. It was in 2021 for the sake of the Olympics. And, but I was actually surprised what I was able to do. I got sixth in the trial, which was also extremely hot. And, but actually, like, if you took the 5K girls, if they hadn't doubled, I would have been on the team. So yeah, I'm excited to just mix it up. And I think that's the kind of stuff I want to do to keep progressing my marathon anyways. So we'll give it a shot. But yeah, that would definitely be one of them. And also, I think just on a personal level, just seeing all my kids thriving. It's been a hard year for a couple of my daughters. And, I think that just weighs on me. And like, as a mom, you just want to see them, overcome, they've been through so much. And so yeah, that's another one that I would say as well, that's personal.
Sara, if you've only had one track season in the last 8, that makes you a very young track runner. So you're ready to hit the track hard. Sara,
I'm going to focus on that.
Sara Hall, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast, Running State of the Sport. I think it's absolutely true that you are an inspiration and role model, not just in your running, but in every single aspect of your life. It's been great to have you with us.
Oh, thank you so much.
Amby, that was an amazing conversation with Sara Hall. I can't think of anyone who's been competing continuously at the elite level from age 14 to 41, which she'll reach next month. She's done so much in her life, and that extends well beyond her great running. And what did you find the most interesting about Sara's talk with us?
I was struck by the fact that she really had a tough year in 2023. She had a string of injuries. She told us at one point that she wasn't able to run for 4 months, which is really a strain on someone with an Olympic trials coming up. But she also said she took a lot of enjoyment from aspects of the sport that required her to answer tough questions. The challenge of how do I deal with these injuries? How do I get myself healthy? How do I get back into training again? She finds the tough stuff actually kind of enjoyable. And that's got to be an attitude that helps you keep going as long as she has been going. And I really admire the fact that she and Sara Ryan and Sara are now in different worlds. Sara's still doing the competitive marathon running, but Ryan is off seeking other physical exploits like building his personal strength or tackling wilderness mountain running. And somehow they both keep reaching to be the best they can be. They support each other. They're off in different domains, but the love and respect and support seems to keep coming back, and they each help each other reach their goals, which, of course, is a high statement for a marriage like theirs. What did you find most interesting, George?
I agree on all of that, Amby. She is so relatable and refreshing, and how she manages to balance the career as an elite runner, a family with their 4 adopted daughters, and then all the charitable work that they're committed to. And the fact that she's already thinking ahead to her post-running career, and the fact that she's going to build a home in Ethiopia for homeless girls. I mean, you just can't say enough about what a special person she is.
I totally agree with you, George. It's wonderful to have people like both Sara and Ryan Hall in this sport. So that's it for this week's episode of Running State of the Sport. We hope you enjoyed being with us as much as we enjoyed sharing the time with you. We'll be back again soon. Until then, please tell your friends about our podcast, Running State of the Sport. We'd appreciate a review at your favorite podcast host, like Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. In signing off, here's our hope for the state of your own personal running. Chin up, clear eyes, full heart, keep moving onward.